Welcome everybody to another episode of Fins Nation. I am your host Louis Sung, and today what we're going to be discussing, folks, is I have an apology to make to all of the Miami Dolphins fans out there. It would seem that in discussing how Jalen Ramsey may not have an injury as bad as we were thinking it was, well, as it turns out, I may have actually jinxed it and made it so that his injury is exactly as bad as we all thought it was. And not only that, I may have doubly jinxed it, considering a previous comment that I made on Twitter regarding Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I will get into all of that, and we will talk about how the Miami Dolphins are coping with this whole situation. But before that, really quick, just want to go ahead and mention that this show is brought to you, as always, by our good friends over at You Brake Wheel Fix. You Brake Wheel Fix is the complete automotive wheel solution. Ever parked too close to the sidewalk curb? You Brake Wheel Fix specializes in the repair of damaged wheels from bends, cracks, and curb rash. Or maybe your wheels are faded or peeling. You don't need to replace them, as You Brake Wheel Fix can refinish them to like new. Offering complete refinish options through powder coating, machining, and polishing, You Brake Wheel Fix is the answer to all of your wheel needs. And if you're just looking to give your ride a new look, You Brake Wheel Fix also offers many car customizing options, such as new custom wheels and tires from your favorite brands, performance upgrades, window tinting, and suspension modifications. Located just south of Aventura, you can reach Mark and his staff at 305-748-0112 or online at youbrakewheelfix.com. They are really active on all social media platforms at You Brake Wheel Fix, so shoot them a DM on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter and get an estimate in just minutes. So don't delay, go to You Brake Wheel Fix and start customizing your ride to show off your Dolphins fandom today. This show is also brought to you by PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is a revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues. Whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, one of each, it's up to you to decide. Just choose whether your chosen player will get more or less than their projected stat. They give you free squares, special Taco Tuesday promos, Flex Friday specials where you can get your money back if you lose or multiply the amount of money you can normally win. So with offers like that, it's hard to justify not signing up. So use the promo code 5, that's F-I-V-E, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. Again, that's promo code 5, spell that out, F-I-V-E. Go to prizepicks.com, deposit your $100, and let PrizePicks give you $100 of their dollars for you to play with and get started winning today. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so once again, my sincerest apologies for what happened. Apparently, I jinxed Jalen Ramsey because after the show ended, my last show, Fins Nation, I went ahead and I was talking about how, well, maybe the injury isn't as bad. We'll see what happens. Mike McDaniel will talk about the injury. But as it turned out, and even though my diagnosis was wrong, I still think the actual treatment is the same. But with that said, my diagnosis was still very wrong. Shortly after I finished recording the show, I saw tweets that were going out that said that Jalen Ramsey would have to go in for surgery. It looks like his MCL is still intact, but he needs to have a full meniscus repair, which he has now done. He's been tweeting about how he wants to beat his rehab time, and every Dolphins fan on earth, myself included, is hoping that he does beat that, but in a way that is still safe for him, because I don't want to just rent Jalen Ramsey for half a year and then he can't play to his full potential anymore after that. I want to be able to have a full-strength Jalen Ramsey for many years to come, especially if it seems like things are going to keep going the way that they're going with Xavier Howard. He's getting older. He might be getting a little bit slower. He would obviously curse you out for saying that, but it is possible that the Miami Dolphins may have to look into using Xavier Howard as trade bait sometime in the near future. But here's where I say that this whole situation, the Miami Dolphins seem to have very much prepared for it, and once again, even though I talked about it a little bit in the last show, I feel like this bears repeating now. The Miami Dolphins were very smart to draft Cam Smith in the second round. He's a first-round talent that fell out of the first round, and now the Miami Dolphins are benefiting from the fact that he is available, and all reports coming out of camp so far is that Cam Smith is right there on the money with everything. He's developing quickly. He looks like he knows what he's doing. Vic Fangio is doing a fantastic job with him. And by the way, just going to go ahead and mention this one more time. Remember I said a couple shows ago, and Xavier Howard talked about this during his press conference a few days ago. Xavier Howard said straight up, watch out for Kader Kohou. And as it turns out, during yesterday's practice, as you are now listening to this, Kader Kohou was wearing the orange jersey, which said that out of every single player on that entire field, he was the best one of the bunch. He was basically the team MVP for that particular practice. And for him to get that kind of adulation I think that bodes very well for the Miami Dolphins cornerback situation as it stands right now. Because, once again, if Kader Kohou turns out that he's not just a fluke player, that he's actually developing into somebody special, now not only do we have a second-round rookie that we can develop, now we also have an undrafted rookie free agent that turned out to be a fantastic signing for the Dolphins. Now he's going into year 2, and he's just getting better and better. So, in the future, look at it this way. Jalen Ramsey, in a couple of years, might actually be another piece of trade bait that Chris Grier could potentially use if Kader Kohou and Cam Smith turn out to be the star players. But we'll see what happens with that. Now, as far as the depth situation, all the reports that came out of training camp, because if you're watching the 3 yards per carry crew, if you're on OnlyFins, which again is only $3 a month to join their Discord server, get inside information on everything, but yesterday's practice was open to the public, so we're allowed to talk a little bit more about certain things. We can't talk about formations, we can't talk about the depth chart, we can't do any of that stuff, but what we can say is that based on the reports that came from the 3 yards per carry crew and everybody who was at 5 Reasons Sports watching that practice, I feel like that we can say that maybe there just might be a little bit left in the tank with Eli Apple. Not that he's somebody that I want to have to rely on, but he actually did a pretty good job just getting things starting out. He's getting a lot of reps in. He's just trying to get to a point where he can be comfortable with the defense. And yes, I know that there was this whole drama with Tyreek Hill not too long ago. But you know what? Just like the whole feud with him and Jalen Ramsey, let bygones be bygones. Everybody's on the same team now. So that seems to be carrying over. Now, would Eli Apple have been my first choice? Probably not. There was other guys like a Ronald Darby that were out there. But you know what? If all else fails, Eli Apple is somebody who did used to, once upon a time, be very highly touted in NFL circles. He was a very coveted draft pick at one point. So maybe just another one of these Miami Dolphins reclamation projects, trying to be able to get Eli Apple back to the point where he was considered one of the better corners in the NFL. And who better to try to make that happen than Vic Fangio? Of all players, and this is the scariest thing of all, this is how good Vic Fangio just might be as a defensive coordinator. Noah Igbenogany said that maybe he had like this just religious experience that made him see things in a whole new way and it's having an impact on his level of play. I don't know how real that is. I'm not questioning his religious experience, not doing that at all, but I am questioning just how much of a difference it's going to make in his level of play. Let's just say that after everything that I've seen from him, after everything that I have witnessed on the field, in practice, just all that, it's so hard for me to be able to just sit there and trust this guy and say that, oh, well, I'm just going to be a lot better now. And again, this is coming from somebody who was willing to give Austin Jackson, of all people, the benefit of the doubt, even for a little bit. But even then, he at least had 14 snaps of good play to make you raise an eyebrow and say, oh, maybe there's something there. Noah Igbenogany has not had anything of the sort. In fact, pretty much every time I've seen him play, it has been bad. It has been so bad. And yet, we're not really hearing that he's been awful. He hasn't been good, but he hasn't been awful either. He seems to be excited about this defense. We will see what happens in preseason. I think once we actually get a chance to see him against other players, because he will be getting snaps in the preseason. He's not one of those starters where you're going to protect him with your very life because you don't want something crazy to happen to him. He will get snaps in the preseason. And you know what? He's going to need them, and kudos to him if he can show something, because all that means is that if he can manage to show just enough to show that this defense actually was able to change him in some way, then maybe, just maybe, Chris Grier might be able to get something out of him. Maybe he'll even be able to get a 7th-round draft pick out of somebody. That would be fantastic if that were the case. Now, what does this whole thing have to do with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson of the Detroit Lions? Well, ironically enough, this is where so many people got on me about this too, and I guess in hindsight it was a bad take. I even had some people in my network saying that it was a bad take. But when news broke that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson had been carted off the practice field for the Detroit Lions, I somehow felt the need to say that while that was very bad for him, the Miami Dolphins actually dodged a bullet, because that meant that he was going to be a Miami Dolphin dealing with that sort of thing. Now, obviously, people pointed out, it's like, oh yeah, well, if he was on the Dolphins, the exact same thing would have happened, right? And obviously, that's not necessarily a guaranteed thing. You can only really play the results. And as it turns out, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was not nearly as hurt as it seemed like he was. Meanwhile, here we have Jalen Ramsey, who ended up up hurting his knee in a non-contact injury, and now his timeline for return is somewhere around December. So once again, Miami Dolphins fans, please forgive me for jinxing our team. I really do hope that Jalen Ramsey comes back stronger than ever and he'll be able to help us during the playoff push, because I still firmly believe there will be a playoff push here. So now with all that said, let's go ahead and talk about some other highlights from the previous few practices that have really started to get my attention. So one of the things that has been talked about by Alfredo Arteaga is that Eric Ezukanma seems to be doing a pretty good job, all things considered. And that's very important, because all we heard last season was that he wasn't ready, he hasn't learned the offense. Well, now he's getting some good reps in against a lot of different players. He's been working against some of the starters, he's been working against some of the backups, and he consistently seems to be able to get open downfield. So he has a really good handle on 1v1 matchups, which is a good thing, because this offense, the way that it functions, it's a lot of intermediate slants, it's a lot of deep routes, it's a lot of giving Tua an opportunity to find an open guy in finding a mismatch and all that really good stuff that we saw last season, but now it's going to be on a more complex level because most of these players already have a really strong idea of what the offense is going to be like. Now, if somebody new comes along, like say a Dalvin Cook, who, by the way, he had his visit with the New York Jets and he left without a contract, although Hard Knocks did get permission to be able to film Dalvin Cook there in New York. So Dalvin Cook now has a very interesting opportunity here. He could take the Jets offer, and yeah, that'd be fine and all. Or he could tell the Jets thanks but no thanks, and it would be hysterical to be able to see Dalvin Cook go on live television and basically tell the Jets that he'd rather go to Miami. Now that would be really funny, but that's neither here nor there. I feel like if I even open my mouth about it at this point, I'm going to end up jinxing it all over again. So I'm going to try not to talk about it too much, but I will go ahead and say I'm very happy with how things seem to be going right now. Speaking of another dude who is doing really well in one-on-one drills, looks like Robbie Chosen is doing another fantastic job. He's somebody that I think could have the inside track on the third wide receiver position at this point. Now, Jacob Michelle at this point says that Cedric Wilson Jr. is the guy who's been getting the most looks, while Braxton Berrios, he's actually the one who looks like he might be falling behind a little bit. Not that he's not doing a good job. He is. In fact, just the other day, he caught a deep pass from Skylar Thompson way down the field, and it was an awesome play. It was pretty much the highlight of that practice. But if that's the case, once again, you have to look at it from the perspective of who is it that's flashing the most. And right now, you have Cedric Wilson Jr., who seems to be a favorite target of Tua in some practices. And then you have Robbie Chosen, who's absolutely annihilating one-on-one matchups. So where does that leave Braxton Berrios? I mean, I guess he's wide receiver 5, but if he's wide receiver 5 at this point, this competition is going to be something incredible, because the tier keeps changing depending on who does what in what practice. You can't even truly say who's doing the best because they're all doing a pretty good job. Robbie Chosen, and then you have Eric Ezukanma now who's starting to step up and do some amazing stuff. So I don't know where this whole wide receiver thing is going to go. If I'm the Miami Dolphins at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and make Eric Ezukanma my wide receiver 6. Let River Craycraft go and be released, and he can be brought back to the practice squad if no other team decides to sign him, which, again, I don't think they will. Now, where does this leave other competitions at this moment in time? Right now, the running back situation is an interesting one. We've been talking about Devon Achane like he's going to be some superstar. We've been talking about how excited we are for him, and I still am. I'm very excited about what could potentially happen with him. But as of right now, we haven't actually seen anything that's just definitive in the sense that he's going to be able to beat out Raheem Mostert anytime soon. He's not doing bad. Let's not misunderstand the situation. He just hasn't made any plays so far that's truly wow-worthy. He's made a few good moves here and there. He's been doing a decent job so far, but he hasn't done anything that's going to make you think, oh, wow, this is probably one of the most amazing things so far. A lot of beat reporters, like for instance Chris Perkins, says that he likes seeing Achane. He's run between the tackles. He's doing a really good job so far. But what's going to happen when the pads come on? Is he going to be able to keep up with everything? Is he going to be able to take the pounding? Is he going to be able to show that he understands the offense to a point where he's going to be able to compete with Raheem Mostert? And If he does, how soon will it be before he ends up taking the lion's share of snaps? I cannot imagine that Mike McDaniel would be so excited about Devon Achane and then it turns out that he's not worth the trouble. I think that it's going to take him some time to get acclimated to the offense, and maybe then we'll start seeing some more splash plays. But as of right now, it looks like my co-host Ron Caniff is correct that unless Dalvin Cook ends up getting to Miami, which is still a possibility, it could still happen. There's no rule that says that now that he's made a visit with the Jets, he has to sign with the Jets. He said, I know that he said on NFL Network that the chances are high that he ends up signing with the Jets, but you know what? I feel like at this point, he's really just trying to leverage Miami. He's said over and over and over again that he wants to come to Miami. He hasn't said officially that he would take Miami over the Jets, but it's not a situation where somebody has to say it outright. All of his context clues, he's been saying over and over and over again, consistently, he wants to come to Miami. And that would be great. We would love to have him in Miami, but it has to be at the price that the Miami Dolphins have set for him. Now, what happens with the Jalen Ramsey thing? Does this have anything to do with it? Some of the talk that's being had on OnlyFins is that maybe, just maybe, the fact that Jalen Ramsey is going to be out until December, you already lost one superstar, so maybe you could go and sign another superstar to kind of fill that void. I don't know if Dalvin Cook is going to be getting more money out of Miami. Honestly, if all things were equal, that's the thing that we have to talk about, right? If things are balanced out, including taxes and everything like that, are the offers equal? If the Dolphins give him maybe like $500,000 more, would that be enough to persuade Dalvin Cook to go ahead and sign with Miami? I'd be willing to give him another $0.5 million. That's not a big deal for me. And the Miami Dolphins are going to be dealing with cap situations next year regardless of what happens. So at that point, you might as well, like I keep saying, go all out, go ahead and sign him. I'm not saying throw $8 million at Dalvin Cook. Some people are going to go off the deep end and say, give this man whatever he wants because he is the best running back in the end. I'm not doing all that. I'm not going that far. I want the Dolphins to sign Dalvin Cook, but only if it is at a reasonable price for, sad as it is, the market that running backs are going for right now. Even Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts, one of the best running backs in football, that's a consensus, by the way. It's not just somebody saying, well, maybe he's one of the best. He is a top 3, I think, running back in the NFL. And even he is having trouble getting a good deal from the Colts. In fact, the drama is getting to a point where Jim Irsay, you want to talk about people saying things that he shouldn't be said. You know, I said something I probably shouldn't have said regarding Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. But here's Jim Irsay saying that if he and Jonathan Taylor died today, the NFL would go on and nobody would miss them. What? Are you crazy? What kind of a comment is that, man? You're basically saying that, yeah, you're including yourself in that discussion, but you're basically telling your player, listen, dude, you don't matter enough. You really think you matter at all in the grand scheme of things? What owner in their right mind, could you imagine, just imagine for 1 minute, that Steve Ross went to Tyreek Hill because Tyreek Hill wasn't happy with his contract? Or let's use some of the players who are unhappy with their contracts. Let's say that Steve Ross came out and said that Connor Williams and Zach Sealer, both who have been fantastic players for the Dolphins since they arrived here, let's say that he comes out and says that if I died today, this is Steve Ross saying this, Steve Ross says, if I died today and if Connor Williams and Zach Sealer died today, nobody would care. Can you imagine how livid Miami Dolphins fans out there would be with those comments? They would be calling once again for Stephen Ross to be fired, that he doesn't deserve to be the owner of the Miami Dolphins. And quite frankly, if he says something like that, he would probably deserve it this time. I've been defensive of Steve Ross. I have also been very upset at Steve Ross for some things that he's done. He's not the worst owner. I wouldn't call him the best owner, but I will say that his desire to win is unparalleled, okay? He wants to win a Super Bowl in his lifetime. He's willing to do whatever it takes, and there is essentially no check that he is not willing to sign if it means that the Miami Dolphins have a better chance at winning the Super Bowl. For that, I can give him credit. He's also done some really stupid things since he's been the owner of the Miami Dolphins, and I think it's fair that we can say that, but he hasn't said anything that controversial as of yet, and quite frankly, if he ever does, I don't think the Miami Dolphins fan base would allow him to survive as the owner for much longer. Jim Irsay, my God, man, you're basically telling, in the midst of all this running back market drama, in which they literally had a Zoom call to talk about how they were going to try to fix the running back market as we know it, and he comes out and says, my best offensive player, Jonathan Taylor, does not matter. If he died tomorrow, he would not be missed. Are you crazy? You are insane, aren't you, dude? Like, I'm sorry. That's just unacceptable. So, the Miami Dolphins may be in a little bit of a pickle with the whole Jalen Ramsey thing right now, but I think that they have enough pieces that they'll be able to get by it as long as they don't suffer another run of injuries like they did last year. We have guys who can replace Jalen Ramsey for the time being, but we can't afford to do that if we end up losing Kader Kohu, then Xavier Howard, Cam Smith, Trill Williams, Nick Needham. Like, if we lose all of those guys, then I don't think the Miami Dolphins are going to be able to keep it up. Like, again, I just finished saying that Eli Apple doesn't look too bad, but again, that doesn't mean he necessarily looks the best either. We don't want to take such a step back in the secondary that Vic Fangio is going to have to do something crazy just to get the defense functioning at a semi-decent level. I still have faith that Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips will be able to force some quarterbacks to make some mistakes, but it is a big difference between having Kader Kohu and Xavier Howard out there than if it were Justin Bethel and Keon Crossan all over again. I do not want the Dolphins to get to that point again. So everybody cross your fingers and hope that Kader Kohu and Xavier Howard manage to stay healthy for a good chunk of time, and if something happens to either of them, it is only for like maybe a game or two most, because that's about as much depth as I'm willing to go without having somebody coming back. Jalen Ramsey's going to be waiting in the wings. He's been making it a point to stay vocal, that he wants everybody to know, listen, I'm still working my tail off. I'm working as hard as I can to get back. I'm going to beat this timeline that the doctors are giving me. I give him credit for not giving up and making sure that his spirits are high. I hope that he comes back stronger than ever, and when he does come back, the Dolphins should be in the midst of a playoff run. That's going to be it for this show. Thank you all so much for listening. We're going to have some more stuff for you tomorrow. More training camp is coming. The Miami Dolphins are going to keep doing what they're doing, and 5 Reasons Sports is going to keep doing what we're doing here, making sure that you guys get all the coverage in the world. Make sure you go check out You Break Wheel Fix if you need to give your ride a new look, or if you just need to get your wheels fixed. And make sure you go to prizepicks.com, use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your deposit when you sign up. So go and get started winning today. Once again, we'll see you all tomorrow for more Fins Nation.